Greetings, everyone. It's so exciting to be back with you. We can feel it in the air, can't we? All the excitement that's happening in the US. But before we get started, we're going to have Neil pray for us, and then Kevin's going to give us an update on some of the inauguration events that he attended last weekend. Neil, it's over to you.
Daryl, thank you so much for this opportunity again. We pray that we will be able to be informative, interesting, and engage people and glorify you in all we say and do. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
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 Yeah, it was so just reflecting on last week. The feeling was like America has turned a page. And this was like unanimous. This is everywhere you go, people had a lighter feel about them. They were much more even though it was cold. I mean, it was 8 degrees some days, less than that some days, wind chill less than 2. But it was but everybody had enthusiasm. Everybody was had had a sense of anticipation and expectation about what's to come. So I went to several balls, and all of the balls were truly celebratory. There was no, yeah, we're here, but I sure wish he would have, or I sure wish we would have had. There was everybody was unanimously on board with Trump and his administration and what the expectation was with all of his secretaries as they go through this process. So it was really, truly an inaugural celebration, and it was more than just. I guess what I'm trying to say, it was more than just pomp and circumstance. It was truly an emotional, um, or let me say it this way, there was truly a mood that was produced about America going forward that was positive, expectant, um, and um, and really, you know, I people had a a perspective about the future that they hadn't had prior. It was like we were all genuinely happy to be out of the sort of malaise that we had over the past several years, past 4 or 5 years.
Mm.
And it really had that malaise. We didn't know how sort of oppressed and downtrodden we were until we have, got to this other side with this inaugural festivities coming up. And so the balls were really, just great times and great expectation. Um, Ironically, there was not, I didn't see a lapse in participation, even though it was sub-zero, very freezing temperatures, not a whole lot of snow, but it was sort of grueling. I mean, trying to get around Washington D.C. and those kind of temperatures and have to wait in line outside to get into the venues, it could be grueling. But um, for all intents and purposes, the people that went, it was worth it. Um, so that was new because when I went to the festivities in 2016, there was a bit of consternation about President Trump and we put him in office, but what is he really going to do? We don't know about this guy. He's kind of a wild card. Now everybody was like, no, he's going to take care of business. This man is he's standing on business on this one,
Mhm.
and and it was like we
Mhm.
can't wait. We were licking our chops. It was that kind of mood. We can't wait to see how this is rolled out over the next several months and what's going to happen there. So that was really, really exciting and encouraging. The other thing that on inaugural day, they had to move that venue inside the Capitol building. Now, what a lot of people, there's this public narrative that they produce that, well, it's too cold. We really need to move it inside to protect people. Um, I do think they wanted to protect people and protect President Trump and all of his secretaries, but I don't think it was the cold was the overriding factor because there was no snow. It was chilly. But when you have hundreds of thousands of people on a Capitol Mall look at viewing something, the body heat between individuals, because they would be kind of put in there that way, wouldn't be unbearable. It wasn't like there was blizzard conditions. It was calm. There's no wind. It was just cold. Shoot. So, so I do think that the public narrative about we just want to protect people because of the cold temperature, so we move it into the Capitol Rotunda was a scripted narrative. I think that in truth they realized that President Trump is a world changer. The entire world was anticipating whether he would actually legitimately get this second presidency, or whether there's still people out there that would rather see him something happen to him in between the time of taking the of getting elected and taking the oath of office. I think that narrative drove their desire to have a controlled environment. His new Secret Service person probably told him, "Look, Mr. President, we can do it on, like we've done all the other inaugurals prior, but it does increase risks for you and for the public exponentially by having it outdoors. We move it indoors. It's inside the Capitol, it's inside our domain. We can control 95 to 99% of the factors that would make sure everybody's safe." I think that was the
Mhm.
prevailing issue, not the public one. Oh, we just want to
Mhm.
protect people from getting, hypothermia. When people go to things like that, they bring their
Mhm.
big coats, they bring their mink coats, they bring, insulated underwear, whatever. I mean, they come ready for that. So that's not that did.
Mhm. Mhm.
But here's the good news. They had it streamed on all of the public, a lot of the public venues in and around Washington at the same time. So they had it at the Capital One Center. I was at the Heritage Foundation. They had an open house and multiple big screens on all the floors, multiple. And so it was a nice reception there. And it was a great opportunity to continue to experience camaraderie and experience the joy of another Trump presidency and another inauguration with very key people around him celebrating him as well at that time. As you know, all of the major tech oligarchs were there, and so it was great. Then later that night, the inaugural ball where he and Melania went to the Liberty Ball and the Commander in Chief ball and some of these other balls and did the first dance and these types of things were all celebratory and festive as well. So it was an incredible time, incredible event. And I would encourage people, if you haven't gone to any of these presidential inauguration type events, that it's worthwhile, especially if you have somebody that you like to see become the president. This is it's a wonderful time to celebrate them and celebrate with others as you celebrate them as well. Celebrate America.
Great, great, great. So, speaking of excitement and all of the changes that have been happening, let's dive into definitely some of the executive orders, right, that have happened. And there's been a lot of uproar. Obviously, we expected that that would happen, but he was very clear as I've been watching the news and listening to things is nothing should be so much a surprise, because all the things that he said on the campaign trail that he was going to do,
That's right.
they voted for him anyways, right? And so he talked about rolling back DEI. And we shouldn't be surprised that many organizations are shocked and scared and panicking especially around DEI, and especially those organizations that represent community colors like the NAACP or the Urban League. And so, Kevin and Neil, I want you to speak to just why DEI rollback is not a bad thing for people of color, and why we hear people saying that, it's like we just rolled all the way past affirmative action and just reversed decades of work, right? Which is absolutely not true. So, Kevin, you start, and then Neil. Love to hear from you.
Yeah. So actually, I'm gonna give you a slightly different narrative about the rollback and not being true. The fact is, we are rolling back, but we're rolling back beyond the civil rights era, rolling back to a
Hmm.
time where decisions were made based on skin color and ethnicity. And that is what DEI is doing today. Okay, so I want to level set us. Remember, during the civil rights era, we had Dr. Martin Luther King who says, "Look, come on, can you guys just give us, give us a shot, give us the opportunity to participate in the workplace and other, domains like everybody else does. We're Americans. Why don't you start judging us based on the content of character and not the color of skin?" And in every major social domain, and especially within workplaces, we made that shift. That was in the 1960s, 1970s. So we made the shift. And then now what they're saying with DEI, diversity, equity is really the key term, and inclusion. What they're saying with that is, no, we really do want to make decisions based upon skin color, ethnicity, gender, LGBTQ status, and etc., because we want those people to run major or major parts of within the organizations, or boards, board of directors. We need these people represented, so we're just going to place them in these areas. Whether they have competency or not doesn't matter. Remember, Dr. MLK's admonition and encouragement was based upon not only, give us a shot, because we know we can compete. We're resilient people. There's nothing that we can't do that anyone else can do. So give us a level playing field so we can get in there and get the job done. But it was also based on meritocracy, merit. There was never this thought of, blacks are innately incapable. We're not going to be able to compete ever. So, we need to be able to just you to bend the curve down for us so we can be able to compete and get a job. That that was not the civil rights. That was not Dr. MLK. That was not what we learned about human experience. That is not what we understand about how do you promote human dignity and excellence in workplaces. This is a new paradigm, this DEI stuff. So what they're doing is they are rolling back beyond civil rights, back to the plantation times, basically, and Jim Crow, and where people were making decisions purely based upon skin color and ethnicity. That's what they want to do now, except they want to do it in a more progressive way, because we're not in change anymore. So we can be the ones that actually place ourselves in these key strategic positions because it's important. No, this is antithetical to what's moral. It's antithetical to actual laws that are on the books. So that's a little bit of the background. Now, the foreground is this: the U.S. government has been funding DEI policies to the tune of about $750 million for the past several years under the Biden administration per year. And but here's the issue. Uh, when Trump says we're going to roll back and cancel any DEI policies and all of that, he's doing it because it's really a redundancy. It's you know employees are protected against workplace discrimination. There's all kinds of workplace discrimination laws on the books today, all kinds of labor laws right now
Mhm.
today. His rollback of DEI just affects the federal government, federal agency. So it's not like, he's rolling back DEI and that means nobody, if you have a private company and you're a Marxist, you're a commie and you want to do DEI, that's fine. You don't care about your business. Okay. You can do DEI, it's no problem. You're a private business, you can do it. But within the federal government, Trump is saying, look, this
Mhm.
is antithetical, it's illegal, it's immoral. It's employers or employees are already protected with the work laws, labor laws that we have on the books. So why are we doing this? $750 million a year, just So anyway, so that's kind of the. I want to give you kind of. I want to try to paint a fuller picture of what we're talking about here. And these civil rights
Mhm.
organizations that are rejecting that are basically saying, well, blacks can't compete. We're innately incapable. They're Darwinists in their thinking, and so they should be
Mhm.
completely and totally rejected. And as a matter of fact, they need to be called what they are: legacy civil rights organizations that are racist and divisive, and really, trying to take us back to, plantation mindsets that are not productive. So I know Neil has a lot more to say, but
No, no, actually, I think you've covered a lot of what I was going to say anyway. But I think the only difference thing I would say is a different thought. I would say is, look, I want you to compare what has DEI done for blacks. Has affirmative action really helped blacks? I mean, originally it was there for a good reason. The reason was, look, if you had a very well qualified black person and a very well qualified white person, they should compete equally. But if you had a very well qualified black person and an unqualified white person, you should not pick the white person over the black person. It was supposed to level the playing field. Now you go, wait a minute, Neil. How can you level the playing field if blacks weren't
Mhm.
allowed to get an education? Well, that's the point. It was supposed to level the education, the playing field right from the beginning, from grade school all the way up to college to the workplace and all that. It was supposed to level that out. Now remember,
Mhm.
it's only for the government. So it's supposed to level out the playing field in the public schools. It was supposed to level out the playing field in the federal contractors and the federal sector. That's what it was supposed to do. Well, did it do that? Did it work? Well, it didn't work. Why? Because if you look at the blacks, if you look at their educational system in the public schools, if you look at their employment history, they're suffering greatly. Now, let's look at another group of people, well, actually, three groups of people who started with nothing, right? Or, in fact, let's look at the Japanese and the Chinese. The Chinese were brought here as indentured laborers, the Japanese were thrown into internment camps, and they didn't get the benefit of affirmative action. In fact, they were discriminated against. In fact, they're still discriminated against. If you're Chinese or Japanese, you can't get into Berkeley unless you've got grades all the way up here.
go
You
ahead.
got to have better grades than white people. And yet the Japanese and the Chinese are excelling everywhere. There's a third group I'd like to throw in there, and that's the Nigerians, right? Nigerians came here, they come here with nothing, and they work hard, and they're doing really well. And affirmative action didn't really apply to them. Now it does. They can claim, hey, I'm black, I can do affirmative action, but they're not using it. So the question is, has affirmative action helped people? No. In fact, what it did is it got to the point where people were using it as a crutch. I don't need to be better. And as Kevin says, and I like the word he uses often, he says the white progressives start to infantilize the black, saying, oh, they're too stupid. Now, they didn't use those words. They're like, oh, they're too stupid to be able to compete equally, so we better change, make it easier for them. Well, guess what happens with human nature? If you make things easier for people, they don't work as hard. If you make things easier for people, they don't learn as much. If you make things easier for people, they get fat and slovenly and they get lazy. Now, it's human nature. You do that to any other group, it's going to happen to every other group. And it's happened to any group. You take the whites in the Appalachian Mountains, take the
Yeah.
American Indians, take the Native American Indians. It's hurt them dreadfully when the government came in and said, hey, we're going to do this for you. Oh, don't worry, we'll take care of you. And this is the problem that affirmative action did. And so the better thing to do is to say, look, we tried affirmative action. It was supposed to do this. And maybe it did it for a while at the beginning, but now it's not working. Now it's just hurting people. And how racist can you be to say, oh, blacks can't compete equally if their opportunities are equal?
Exactly. Can I add to that as well that I think people view DEI and affirmative action as being synonymous. Now, there actually are some slight differences.
Yeah.
Affirmative action, because of the era that it was coming out of, it created an environment where it was a fairly good idea to try to get more blacks involved in the workplace, but it never uh, diminished or it was never intended to subvert
Yeah.
competency. It was just saying, look, we need you to try to hold some slots for blacks to get them involved in your workplace. It's still going to be up to you, Mr. Employer, to find the blacks that are qualified for those positions. Now, the qualifying word here is there was never this idea that you should put people in a position, especially a position of power, a position of some kind of an authority, a position that requires severe competency, like firefighters in Los Angeles, for instance, and you put people in a position that really they don't qualify. They're not qualified to be there. That's a DEI notion. That's an equity notion. So it's different than affirmative action. It goes well beyond affirmative action because here's what happens: the wokesters, the emotional midgets who have graduated from our colleges with their Marxist ideas. Um, and I say that with all due respect. No disrespect to emotional midgets. I'm sorry, you just emotional wreck. I understand, but but, but here's what happens: is they let their emotions say, look, we need to be at the table, and if we can't run up through the ranks because we don't have time, you just need to make space and just put me there. Then that's the rant basically that drives the schemes of DEI. It's with equity being the major operative word. And so based on equity, they have been placing people in positions of power that really are not fundamentally competent. They have no proven track record, no competency, no core skills, but they happen to check off a box. So they're LGBTQ, they're black, they're dark skinned, they're whatever the subjective or other characteristics that you need to check off the box. And fundamentally, they're a diversity hire. We've seen a lot of problems with diversity hires. We've seen problems within Secret Service from the diversity hires. We've seen problems within law enforcement, especially in New Orleans, with the latest, terrorist attacks. Diversity hires. We've seen the FBI, and their various narratives around the New Orleans terrorist attack from diversity hire. We've seen now the LA fires. Karen Bass, diversity hire. Uh, Her fire chief, diversity hire, lesbian. The fire chiefs, lieutenants, diversity hires, all of them, and they all committed. Yeah, we're diversity hires. We need DEI. This is what we drive on. This is how we're going to change the entire, change and transform the LA Fire Department from a white male profession to a 30 to 40% white, 30-40% female population. So these are diversity hires, and we see the carnage that unfortunately people are suffering a lot of consequences because of these diversity hires. We There's never a shortcut for competency. Everybody, every American, every person who's serious about any kind of human dignity and excellence should say, yeah, we must get rid of DEI because it fails in those areas, and there's nothing really redeemable about it. It is purely Marxist in the sense. And my book, DEI and 3D, I fully unveil and unpack that. But the bottom line is it's a scheme that does not work. It does not fulfill the purposes of the workplace, of personal dignity, or of unity and human flourishing within workplaces generally. So we have to get rid of it. And Trump did the right thing by calling for its immediate, dismissal and change policy on it.
So, I mean, a couple of things that we should also note is that very large private public companies have also dismissed their DEI programs. So it's not like the whole world thought it was good,
Mhm.
and then because Trump said it was bad, now they're going to do it. Because we know that there are many of these organizations that have dropped their DEI are liberal, left-leaning organizations, right? So there's and they've got their own power and might and money within themselves that they could stand maybe the community backlash if they thought it was a bad thing, but they're dropping them. I mean,
Yeah.
have you really thought about all of the large companies who have dropped their DEI programs? And then, the other thing that I think sometimes we might be hesitant to talk about, or I have a viewpoint on, which everybody may not agree with, is that I don't know that affirmative action and DEI were formulated to do the same thing. We've had the conversation like maybe a year ago or so, and every so often we bring it up about how the LGBT community came in on the civil rights movement and kind of overtook that
Right.
as as a way to integrate and to make changes for their community. And I felt like that DEI was just that for them, because most of the time when I see things about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it really highlights transgender and LGBTQ preferences,
Yes.
right? It doesn't, you know, again, I feel like the LGBTQ, the trans, that all of that, even though they're a smaller population than the Black community, they have that small group of them have overtaken the whole discussion about equity and inclusion.
Yes.
And so I don't understand why certain Black civil rights organizations are coming up behind it and saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because if you were concerned, really concerned about the Black community, you would realize that this LGBT community is even surpassing you as far as what's getting access to civil
Yeah.
rights. And it kind of leads us into this conversation with illegal immigration, right? And it's like, I'm not here to complain about, as a Black female, not getting my fair share of access, right? But I want to look at what the left is saying, and those who stand on that progressive side as Black progressives, Black Democrats. If Have you stopped to really look at how you are blindly allowing an LGBT community to come in and get the rights, how you are all in for illegal immigration? Now, lately, we've seen some uprise from like the Chicago residents. They have been so mad at their mayor and their governor, right? For allowing illegal immigrants to come in. And I remember even before 2025, I remember seeing articles from New York, right? That uh, Blacks were upset that illegal immigrants were getting these prepaid Visa cards with $2,000 and $3,000 on it,
Yeah.
paying for their hotel room, paying for their cell phones, and going to buy food, and they've got this prepaid card with thousands of dollars on it, and here you are, an American citizen, and you're only getting just some chump change,
Right.
and yet you still come in behind this machine that denigrates you. I'm like confused. I'm lost. I mean, do you really understand how illegal immigration, not just because they're getting money, right? Not just because they're getting, these prepaid debit cards. You shouldn't just be angry about that. You should really think about what kind of class they're creating in our society that is really truly pushing not just Black Americans, but Americans in general further behind.
Yeah.
So Neil, then Kevin.
Well, I mean,
Neil, then Kevin.
there's a
Go
couple
ahead and
things.
comment on illegal immigration.
There's a couple of things here. One, also, you have to realize it's not loving to the immigrants. Imagine you're here in a country illegally, and the person who's supposedly hiring you decides to take money out of your paycheck. Who are you going to complain to? If they say, hey, we're going to charge you for this or charge you for that, or if they say, oh, you got to wear longer hours, we're not going to pay you overtime. If they say, you better not do this, otherwise we're going to get you deported. I mean, it's not a free will service. It's more like indentured labor, like when the Chinese came. So it's any way you look at it, it's not good for the immigrants too. Yeah, they're getting a bit more money, but they're not being treated like human beings. They don't have any real civil rights because they've got that threat right above them. So number one, that's the first thing. Secondly, as an immigrant, I don't want I don't want to be walking down the street and people think, oh, look, he's illegal because he doesn't look like us, right? I want people to respect me, the fact that I came through the whole process. I did everything carefully and almost got kicked out, by the way, because somebody messed up my paperwork, right? And still was able to stay here and become a legal immigrant. I came here on a student visa and was able to go figure out what I need to do to stay. So I think it's very important that we understand this is not just a Black issue. This is a immigrant issue, and an illegal immigrant, we're not doing them any favors. But then, of course, let's talk about the 80,000 kids that were lost in the system. These are immigrant kids. What do you think those kids are being doing? They're being farmed out for sexual favors or something like that. Who knows what's happening to them? How dare you think that you think it's okay to bring all these illegal immigrants in and let them and then harvest their kids for something or the other? Who knows what? And so I think it's very important that we understand there's a humanitarian part to this as well as the Black part of it. Now let me talk about the Black part of it. The biggest once you start letting all these other people who want to be oh, I just call myself a woman, so now I can play basketball amongst the women. Or I, what? I'm not a very good tennis player, but what if a white guy says, oh, I want to be a woman tennis player, and now there goes all of Serena Williams's options and chances, or anyone like that. You're changing the entire scenario of sports and locker rooms and everything. This is not loving to anybody when you bring this whole DEI and wokeness into the system, and you allow other groups to now co-opt or hijack what was originally meant for people who had been suppressed, and now it's used to oppress sometimes the same people.
Yeah, good. On the humanitarian side of the border issue, we absolutely applaud President Trump for his decisive nature and using Tom Homan, who's been a hawk on the border for decades, to take that over. And here's why. People are being murdered. Women and young girls are being raped mercilessly just to try to get to the U.S. border. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but they've actually done statistics. And they found that upwards of 70%, and supposedly that's a conservative number, 70% of all women and young girls and some young boys are raped multiple times making the trek up to the U.S. border. Now, that is a human rights atrocity that everyone should be brokenhearted about. I mean, that is absolutely horrible. We can't even fathom the level of terror and shame and disgust that they have to endure
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
for the right to come across the border. Then once they get here, they have to pay off the people who brought them here, so they're sex slaved in the United States. I'm not talking about a scenario or a paradigm that well, it's not that common. This is the typical way that these people are coming here. So this is not like a one-off, or well, you're talking about the worst of the worst case. No, this is how it's done. Matter of fact, the United States was the number one sex slave country in the world last year, or over the past 4 years, with the Biden administration.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they were able to validate this based upon some of the statistics and interviews and all of that. So this is horrendous. So whatever we can do to stop the human suffering on just to get here
Mhm.
is wonderful, and everybody should applaud and get behind that. Then once they're here, we need to stop the human suffering here. Now we're getting into more of the moral issues for U.S. citizens. The U.S. citizens now have to deal with
Mhm.
we're paying taxes and setting money aside for improvement of major, dilapidated communities like in Chicago and Memphis and certain areas around the country, New York. That monies have been already set aside, hundreds of millions of dollars in these local municipalities to make improvements, to improve the schoolyards, to improve, make, some, maybe even some, minor improvements to schools, whatever. But there's tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars have been set aside to do that work. None of those monies over the past 4 years were able to go to those designated projects because the cities used that money
Mhm. Mhm.
that was mostly set aside for Black and brown
Mhm.
communities to do improvements. They use that money to take care of the illegals, give them free housing, uh,
Mhm.
food, and give them a stipend.
Mhm.
Now, what's especially appalling
Mhm.
morally is we have American citizens that are here, born here, that are homeless right now. They're on the street. Some of them want to remain on the street. And I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the homeless mother who may have 2 or 3 kids living out of a car or out of a truck or something, and because they're in the middle of a temporary situation, right? Um, but what about at least providing the American citizens the same benefits that you're affording people who just got over the border? Most of them,
Mhm.
illiterate in their own language. Most of them, you know,
Mhm.
certainly can't speak English or anything like that. So why don't we use it for helping, providing
Mhm.
services to those American citizens that are in need as well? But those were strictly
Mhm.
designated for illegal aliens, and not for American citizens. That's appalling. Everybody should be upset.
Mhm.
So when I hear civil rights organizations, when I look at moronic people like billionaires, uh, Selena Gomez, go on and crying with her crocodile tears about, oh, my people are being, stop it. The first wave of people that are being um, deported are all criminals. They have criminal histories, proven criminal histories, convicted multiple times, already slated for deportation. Stop with the tears. These are people
Mhm.
we have to get off the streets.
Mhm.
They're killing people. They're
Mhm.
DUIs. They're killing, raping people. Things are happening, but these people are causing major, major problems. And we should all applaud at this point. Let's get these people out of here, right? And so,
Mhm.
his executive order to immediately deport, especially the criminal aliens, but I would say any and all aliens, mostly because of what Neil talks about too, as far as fairness. I mean, he had to take a lot of time, take multiple tests, spend a lot of money to become a citizen. This is an honored thing. This is not something that everybody should be able to step into. Well, I'm here now. Y'all may as well make me a citizen.
Right.
I'm not here with that. So,
Right. Listen.
yeah.
Listen. I was going to say I've traveled a lot. You guys know. Lived in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Malaysia, South Africa, Kenya, Zambia. And um, as an American citizen, everyone always thinks I'm rich, right? And first of all, many people don't believe I'm from America because I'm black, right? They're like, there are no black Americans, right? And um, then they think, yeah, yeah, really, they don't believe most. Well, like you can't be from America because you're black. Only white people live there, and if you're there, then you're wealthy. But so there's a value placed on my American passport. But let me tell you, I can't stay longer than my visa allows me to, right? I can't just come in. Now, these are countries all over the world. And as an American citizen, yes, there are many countries that I can just show my passport and get in for 90 days. But after 90 days, I have to leave or I have to apply for something else, or I get blacklisted, or I get thrown out, or they will put me on a plane. I don't care that I'm an American and I bring value because there's already an assumption that I have money. So I'm going to spend money in your country. You're not going to have to pay for me, right? But there's that sense across the world. So why do we think that in America it's okay to just let anybody cross the border and come in when all across the world, even with your US passport, you can't do that in other
Yeah.
places
Well, I think
because they don't want to take care of, and they're expecting me. Some places actually require you to submit your bank statement. They want to know you have money before you can even just come in there and visit. Go ahead,
I
Neil.
mean, what they
Sorry.
really want, excuse me, what they really want to do is what we really have to look at is what they really want to do. What they really want to do, and when I say they, I'm talking about the World Economic Forum. I'm talking about all these people. What they're trying to do is they're trying to destroy individual countries, and that's why Europe is flooded with immigrants, and that's why America is flooded with immigrants, so-called immigrants. What it is there's two things that's going on. One, they want to take control. So if they can bring in a few million people and just give them citizenship or allow them to vote even without a citizenship, and then insist, like in California, you can't insist on any ID. So you could go into, any person can go into any voter thing as long as they, in fact, they can stand there and they can look at the voter. They're supposed to check out who's voting. They can look at it and see who hasn't come in yet and say, well, I'm that person. They're not allowed to ask for ID. They're not allowed to ask for anything. They can get a ballot. They can go vote for what they want. So they can send in as many people as many times as they want, because then the guy can go to the next polling place and the next polling place, next polling place, and they
Town.
can do that without anybody stopping them. You can do ballot harvesting, where all you have to do is go look online and see who hasn't voted, and then register as them, and then you'll get like 50 ballots at your home, and nobody's going to ask any questions. The whole purpose is so that they can control the narrative, they can control who wins the election, so they can take over America. And this is what's happening everywhere else. You've just got to look at why, because why would anybody do that? I always say, if it's so stupid that nobody would ever dream of doing it, it was planned.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been watching news about Europe, UK, and I just didn't realize in Great Britain how bad it's gotten with their
Yeah.
immigration that has come in. Is totally. Even British news people are like, "Yeah, Trump. I hope we can. I hope our government and our people will be inspired to put their own country first, right?" And so with Britain and much of the immigration that has happened there and is totally changing the culture and the politics of that nation.
Yeah.
And so if we want to look ahead, let's see what happened to such a great nation as Britain, right? And how they're in this malaise and this decline. Millionaires are leaving, people are leaving, the crime rate is up, and let's not even get into the groomer gangs over there, but that's probably for another conversation, and not today. But back to us, I think that one of the other things that I've heard, which really makes a lot of sense to me, is as Americans generally, how dare we think that it's okay to pay illegal immigrants under the table,
Right.
right? Because, who's going to do a lot of people are complaining, well, what's going to happen to our workforce? We need workers. And it's like, you have workers, but you just don't want to pay the correct rate, right? To clean your house, to childcare, to do your lawn, to work on your farm. Like, you don't want to pay that money. But this is a sense where I'm like, yeah, you should pay the money, because when you pay them the money, they're going to spend the money in community. Your community's going to go up. It's going to benefit so many other things around you. But if you only think about your own pocketbook, right, and your own budget, then of course you're going to want illegal immigrants to stay in the community. And so the rest of the people need to say, instead of looking at those who are saying illegal immigration is wrong, why don't you look at the corporations? Why don't you look at the individuals who are willing to pay below average rates under the table to get their work done so that they can increase their profits?
Yeah.
Like, come on, you're attacking the wrong people, because we don't want illegal immigrants here, because we want to see the betterment for people in our own community. But that means that corporations and businesses and individuals who hire them to do their lawn, to clean the pool, to be their cooks and maids and be their housekeepers, that's not fair. It's not. And I'm not trying to be socialist at all, right? I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to think, oh, we need to share the wealth that way. But I think we need to understand that there should be fair work and fair wages.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing.
So,
Well, the good news is that with Trump's executive order to deport all illegal aliens, he's starting with the criminals first, but he's going to work his way all the way back down to, whoever is getting any kind of stipend from the U.S. government. That would be free medical, free whatever, free food. Anybody that is here illegal, let's stop it. When that stops, they're going to be self-deporting. And so we're going to solve this problem with hiring, people that we may know who will work for less, because a lot of them are going to be self-deporting because they're not going to be able to live here, quite honestly. So Trump has the right idea. These things that you're mentioning, Regina, will be worked out. It's going to take a little bit of time, but those things will be worked out, and it's going to work out for all of our good as well when these things happen.
So one of the things that we have to realize is that when you talk to the immigrants, quote unquote, when you talk to the legal workers, they want a worker program. In fact, I was just talking to a campesino. He's a Mexican leader of peasants, farmers, campesino union. And he actually worked with Cesar Chavez in the old days. And he came to me, read my book, and he loved the book. And he said, we got to talk, because there's something has to be done. And he had a whole list of things that I went over. And he's saying, look, we want to be able to come here and work legally, because we don't want the risk coming in, we don't want the problems coming across the border. We want a security in that. And then he said, look, the reality is that people who can work here legally already have a little card, but that the border patrol makes them wait for 3 hours. Why? Why can't they just scan it and walk right in? And he said, and then when we get into the complex, there's no restrooms. He says, these are the things we want. We want restrooms. We want food. We want access. We want to personally talk to some of the fast food joints and say, look, sometimes we get in at midnight and there just isn't enough food here. We're ready to give you our money. But so there's a lot of things that they want, but they don't want to be illegal. And the people who want to be illegal are the cartels, the gang members, the people smuggling kids. These are the people who want to be illegal. The people who want to work here legally want to do it safely so they can rely on it. They want to come in, they want to work, they want to go back. In fact, most the guys that I'm talking to, he says they come in and they wait at the border for 3 hours, and then they drive an hour to wherever they're working, and then they drive back, and they said they get no time with their kids. What they'd like to do is cut up cut that up completely. What if they could just walk through the border in 10 minutes, boom, get to their job in an hour, work, and be back for dinner with their family? He says this is not possible the way it is because of all the illegal people getting through the border. They're checking everybody and so on.
Mm,
He says this is just hassling us. People want to work and we want them to work. And I've talked to a lot of Americans back when my book was first written. I would travel around and talk to people, and I would ask Americans, I would say, let me ask you this. As an immigrant, this is important to me. I said, if somebody comes here, wants to participate in the economy, wants to work hard, wants to pay their taxes, and doesn't want to get anything free, doesn't want free healthcare, doesn't want welfare, doesn't want free schools, they're going to be part of the economy. Do you have any problem with them? And almost every one of them said, no, we wouldn't. And I'll tell you why they wouldn't, because the pie, the American economic pie is not cut into pieces. The more people working in the economy, the bigger the economy gets. In fact, it gets bigger for other people.
Yeah.
So everybody gets
mhm,
happier. Everybody says, hey, there's more stuff here. These people are here. They're spending their money. They're buying more stuff. Everybody's happy. But when you do the illegal immigrant part and you take money from people and then you take all their public school education, I mean, the public schools, it's got to, it's terrible anyway. But if you take all that income, you take all the healthcare money, you take all the crime, because the police are going out there having to do all this stuff, you're not helping anybody. The economy is shrinking. You're hurting everything. There is a solution and we just need to apply it, and Trump is applying it.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's do one quick thing before we wrap up our time. Speaking of other executive orders and things that Trump signed, one of them was to cease foreign aid for 90 days, but also he stopped the DOJ from handling any cases. And so that includes all civil rights cases that were in the midst of being settled, being discussed, sentencing. All of that has ceased. Um, I saw an article somewhere where there was a complaint by a national civil rights organization that Trump just doesn't care about Black people and civil rights because he stopped the DOJ. And I'm thinking he did he simply, after all of his interactions with the DOJ, and maybe on another call we'll get into the J6 and all of that stuff, I see why he would stop everything to
Yeah.
evaluate, right? Because they have been harsh, they have been dehumanizing, they have violated civil rights in many ways of many
Yep.
people. Um, and so I want to hear your thoughts on Kevin and Neil about how what your perspective is on the DOJ, and is it really going to hurt civil rights if things pause for a moment so that they can get a grasp on what's really going on?
No, I think it's logical, it's prudent, it's rational for him to do that. We got a whole different direction that he's trying to deploy within the Department of Justice. We have Pam Bondi coming on that's going to take that thing over. She's got a whole new way to do business and to assure that everyone's getting equal justice uh, you know across all agencies, and that her attorneys generals and especially those within the states that they're actually comporting themselves according to the laws. There's been a lot of malfeasance going on within the Department of Justice. I mean, we saw what happened with Trump, but those types of things have been happening to a lot of individuals across the country as well. J6 and others who just happen to be caught up in the system somehow, and this is unfair. So it's smart to do a reset, basically, on the Department of Justice, allow Bondi and her other, cohorts to go through all the cases that are pending, and to make sure that justice is really being served in all of these circumstances. It's what should have been expected, but of course, when you have sort of people on the other side of the aisle, they have to complain about something. So this is just one of those things.
Well, I mean, I think that whole group, everybody there needs to be evaluated and fired. And They all need to. I mean, the Department of Justice has become the Department of Injustice. I mean, come on, let's be real. It's become the king's arm to do what the king wants them to do, not what the law wants to do. We've returned from we were supposed to be Lex Rex, the law is king. We've gone back to Rex Lex, the king is law, back, which we had a Magna Carta to sign against us, right? But no. Biden wants this, and the DEI people want this, and so they want this. It's got nothing to do with civil rights. It's got everything to do with what the person in power wants, and that's got to go. Yeah. That's got to stop. And the only way you can stop it is by going in there and firing everybody that needs to be fired, and all these long-term people who don't do any work. Half of them probably don't do any work. Let me give you a great example: the Secret Service. Right? We were just at AmFest, and for 4 days before the president showed up, they were getting 20,000 people through those doors because they had 4 or 5 workers checking people doing that. You get in, they go, "Hi, how's it going? Boom, boom, boom. Let me check your bags." We had backpacks, we had everything, and they would check everything, and they would get us through maybe about 10 people a minute. Trump shows up, and the Secret Service is there. They do less checking. We're not allowed to have bags. We're not allowed to have purses. We're not allowed to have anything. All you have is your jacket, and you got to take it off. And then there's one person doing the checking and 4 people standing around looking. And it took us 2 hours to get through. And yet there's this local security company that did a better job. Once I got through security, I saw some of them standing on the around, and I said, "You guys did a far better job than the Secret Service." He says, "Yes, because we're Hispanics. That's why." We got to get the Mexicans. We got to get the Mexicans to do all the work. These white people don't know how to do any work. Right, but that's not the point. The point is the reality was that these white people, brown people, whatever they were working for the government, and they had 1 person checking bags and 3 people standing around.
That's crazy.
They've got to go. They've got to go. Yeah. And these are the idiots that let Trump get shot.
Right. Yeah.
Department of Justice, my foot.
Okay, speaking of, I totally lost that thought now about the DOJ and yes, the injustice. I know that people are like the Department of Justice is okay or doesn't need to be checked, but when you think about, we've seen that meme for a while about the 21 pro-life people who were put in jail.
That's right.
Some of them put in jail just for praying.
Yeah.
A grandmother.
It's a fact. Yeah.
Put in jail.
It's a fact.
For praying.
Yeah.
It's like, come on now. You have to understand. Now, you can't be so pro-choice that you are happy that a pro-life person goes to jail. Yeah. Because know that the minute that they go for their rights, they're coming for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? We used to talk about this as people of faith, right? When you don't want any kind of religious persecution, I don't care what religion you are, because eventually they're going to come for you, right? And so the idea that go ahead.
Now, let me give you a quick example. After Hitler used the brown shirts to take over Germany, who did he kill first?
Yeah.
The brown shirts.
Mm-hmm.
The Night of the Knives, right? He goes in and he kills all the brown shirts. He has his other men kill all the brown shirts. Why? Because the most dangerous person to Hitler once they took over Germany was the brown shirts. Right? So that's exactly, once you guys get all the other people who are looking for liberty out of the way, the people who are exercising their free rights, guess who they're going to come out? They're going to come after you because you are the troublemaker. You're the kind of guy that tries to get other people in prison, and they want to get rid of you.
Yeah. But I mean, if you never do if you think about the Department of Justice and you even balance it with the J6ers and the pro-life people, like this is the same system, right? That are putting people in jail. And what's ironic, right, is that, okay, the J6ers who even attacked the police officers and the amount of time that they got, not because they went through a trial per se, but through the commission that set a whole bunch of these things up. But then look at, let's just even take the Tyree Nichols case. You had those black cops who beat that kid to death. And some of them got acquitted, didn't do hardly any jail time.
Wow.
And you're upset because a J6er who stunned a police officer, he got like 12 years and he served 3, and then he got pardoned. And you're upset about the violence. But the same Department of Justice cannot give you justice for cops who beat and kill suspects in their care.
Yeah.
Like, what are you watching the same thing? How can you be so upset about the J6
Yeah.
and forget the DOJ who didn't prosecute authority figures who harmed civilians, not shot from a distance. I'm talking hands-on assaulting, and they're getting released and not being prosecuted. But you're upset because J6ers served time and now they get out. But we have law enforcement and people who didn't serve any time at all. And you have pro-life people who are praying, who are getting thrown in jail, who are getting the Department of Justice coming to their house, searching their homes because they're pro-life people. Like, this whole system is messed up, and I think people are having selective amnesia.
Well,
Yeah.
It's selective amnesia.
the laws have to change. And so one thing is the laws is a bit too vague. They've got to start clarifying the laws, because obviously we know we can't trust these people to do the right thing. So what we got to do is we got to go in and we got to change the laws. We can't, as one of my articles mentioned, Trump wrote all these executive orders. Well, guess what? The next person that's going to come in may upset them all. I mean, we were doing really well. Biden came in and upset everything. So we've got to have a system that is stable all the time. Now, you may want your liberal to put it in place, but I'm telling you, while the conservatives are in place, the conservatives need to be agitating for all these laws to be made firm and final while we have the House and the Senate and the Supreme Court, so that we have liberty. Remember, we're not asking for special favors. We're just asking for liberty. And what's more important than that is we got to take power away from the president. The president should never be able to do this again. Why? Because any power you give a good president is a power a bad president is going to have. And we should remember that. If you want America to be stable, the solution is not in who's running the country. The solution is who you elect every 2 years. And that's how our Republican system of government was made, that you get to elect somebody every 2 years. So if you don't like him, you got to kick him out in 2 years. You're not stuck with some mucky muck that you can never reach, and you need the rest of the half of the country to tell them what to do.
That's right. Yeah.
Good. Kevin, any last words before we close?
Yeah, just to help everybody remember what are the past DOJ, some of them malfeasance. First of all, we had the summer of 2020 where they literally let over $2 billion in property damages across all major metropolitan areas across the country occur, and they very, very, very few arrests. These people, and I'm talking about BLMers and Antifa, they went into federal buildings as well. And yes, they did actually storm the White House at one time during that time as well. I don't know if a lot of people forgot about that, but they actually had to take President Trump and lock him in a bunker underneath the White House because they were storming the White House. So these people did horrendous things. Very few, if any, suffered any consequence whatsoever under this DOJ. This DOJ also, when they knew there was laws in the books that prevent anybody from intimidating the Supreme Court, the people who had intimidated the Supreme Court and went to the Supreme Court houses, did marches in front of all of the Supreme Court justices' homes, and there was no consequence. None. No DOJ. Even though there was laws on the books that said that is a felony and you have to do time. Nothing. So yeah, we should put all of the Department of Justice issues on hold, pause it for 90 days. It's a prudent thing to do. President Trump is doing the absolute right thing. and then do a reset with the new administration so we can actually go forward with equality, measures of equality and justice for all men, and not just, my favorite party or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been good. Great. Thank you guys so much. Listen, everyone, we are so appreciative of you joining us today or watching us on a replay. We do want to encourage you to follow, like, and share. If you also go to our website, everyblm.com, and go to our blog space, you will find that we did a great article on a report on the state of Black life in America. We'll make sure that we put a link to that in these descriptions, and we'll be sending it out again throughout our social media. But really download, read that, and share with those that you care about. To everyone, have a blessed evening. Good night.